In this video, you'll build Tinder Blockchain Web 3.0 app using Next.js. We'll use Metamask to wrap the entire app up in authentication. We'll use Moralis to authenticate the users who actually sign in. We'll be using Moralis because it's a Web3 development platform, so especially if you're a Web2 developer, it makes it really easy to interface with Web3 and blockchain without writing a single line of Solidity. Then we'll create a profile for each user using Sanity.io as our backend. Oh, and here's something cool that we're going to be doing. When two users match, we'll mint an NFT for them using Moralis and Solidity. We'll use a so-called gasless minting method to mint our NFTs. That way, our users don't pay a ridiculously high gas fee for minting NFTs. We'll use Open Zeppelin to make sure our NFTs are compliant with the ERC 721 method. Last but not least, you'll be able to view your very own NFTs on OpenSea. And by the way, before we start, here's something you don't have to pay gas fees for: the like button. Smash that! Oh, my glasses fell out.
A few moments later.
Well, here, smash the like button, turn it blue, and we'll get the video started.
One eternity later.
Right before we get started and start coding, I just want to let you know that we're doing a collab with BuildSpace, which is one of the best Web3 education platforms in the world. And you guys are going to be getting an NFT that proves you completed this project, and it's going to be in collab with BuildSpace and Clever Programmer, and it's going to look sick. BuildSpace also has an incredible community of Web3 developers who you can learn together with in their Discord, and they're very active. Last but not least, BuildSpace is also helping new Web3 developers like yourself get matched up with top tier companies like Adidas or Alchemy for premium high contracts. And I'm talking about $10,000 to $20,000 a month contracts, and their vision is amazing. I even met their CEO, Barza, and he's just an incredible, amazing human being. So I'm really excited about this collab. And the best part for you guys, it's completely free. All you have to do is just go down below, click the link in the description. It's going to take you to a landing page, and then it's going to ask you to connect your wallet. And once you connect your wallet, you're good to go. And then when you do this build and you complete it, that wallet will be able to verify you did it. You'll get your own NFT, and you'll get the entire community and everything that goes with it. Okay, so again, it's completely free. Go ahead, sign up for that right now. And with that said, let's just jump right into the video. So here we have the Tinder app. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with Metamask. So I'm going to connect my Metamask, make sure it's there. Let's go ahead and sign in, and boom, confirm. Boom, I'm in. Now I can see my matches. I can swipe right, I can swipe left, whichever way I want. Now I can go into my database on Sanity, and you can see for Rafik Kazi, here are the 3 likes that I have. Those are all the 3 people that I swiped right on. So now they show up. We can also go and see the other people and see which likes do they have. So now let's say I sign in with another account. So I sign in with Danielle's wallet. Let's go and see what she has. So let's say she swipes left on Vicky. She swipes right on Kazi. Now, boom, we go back to Danielle, and in Danielle's likes, you can actually see Rafik Kazi just showed up. Now I can go back to Rafik Kazi, and I can see Danielle just showed up under Rafik Kazi's likes because it's a match now. Okay, so it's a match on both ends. Now that we have a match happen, boom, look at that. It just minted an NFT based on that specific match, and that NFT is actually called Rafik Kazi and Danielle Smith, right? It's happened because of the match. It tells you when it was created. The standard is ERC 721. Just like I said, we're using Open Zeppelin to do that. And I can go back and forth between each of the accounts. I'll copy this account, paste this address, and I'll go to Rafik Kazi on OpenSea, and boom, you can see that for Rafik Kazi, it has that NFT as well. How freaking cool is that? Both of those accounts get a matching NFT. If you're excited about building this project, I'm excited. Without any further ado, your instructor for this is going to be, once again, Lance. So I'm going to send it over to Lance. Make sure this video gets over 1,000 likes so he can keep his job, because I told him any of these videos gets under 1,000 likes, he's fired. So make sure you smash that like button. I'm going to send it over to Lance. Lance, take it over and start coding this bad boy up.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Lance here again, and I'll be walking you guys through the Tinder clone blockchain. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is hop over to your terminal. Mine's right here. And let's get right into it by making a folder. So hop over to your terminal. Let's create our project folder. So go ahead and type this command. What this will do is create a folder called Tinder clone blockchain. We can go ahead and CD into that folder. And in here, we want to be creating our Next.js app. So to do that, we can type in this command, and you're going to write npx create next app at latest. And don't forget to put a space dot, because the space dot, what this will do is create the Next.js app and put all the files inside this folder that we just created. Okay, so go ahead and hit enter and let all of that download. Cool. Now that's done. Hop over to your VS Code and you can actually open your code. Open that folder. So what I'm going to do is open folder. And if I click select folder, you will see all the project files of our Next.js app in here. The next thing we're going to need to do is create a couple folders. So since you're here, make sure you create a studio folder. In the studio folder, this is where we're going to be setting up our database. And of course, we're going to be using Sanity. Okay. And then the next thing you want to do is create another folder. Make sure it's at the root of your project. This one is going to be called Smart Contract. In this video, we're actually going to be making a smart contract in Solidity and deploying that smart contract to the blockchain. So that's what we're going to be setting up in this smart contract folder. Okay. And now that we have that done, we can actually open our terminal within our VS Code. And let's go ahead and set up Sanity with our database. So what we're going to do is, if you look at the path, we can go into our studio folder. So now I'm in my studio folder. And like I said, let's set up Sanity here. So in order to set up Sanity, what we can do is open up your browser and we can type in sanity.io/cleverprogrammer. And once you're there, all the instructions that you need are going to be right here. If you don't have the client installed, go ahead and type in this command into the terminal. And then afterwards, go ahead and type in this command here to initialize Sanity in the studio. All right. So if you look, this is the command right here. And by doing this and adding our coupon code, you're going to get all these bonus stuff right here provided to you by Sanity. We're going to get more API requests and overall just a better experience with the free plan. So definitely take advantage of this and go ahead and hit enter. Awesome. So we're going to make a project name. Keep it the same name as our folder, Tinder Clone Blockchain. You can hit yes for the default dataset. Make sure it's the same path. And what we want from here is a clean project with no predefined schemas. Okay, it's linking dependencies. Awesome. So if you look in the studio file, all the Sanity stuff is set up. And all you need to do is go back to your browser and you can go ahead and log in to your account. And you're going to see that my project is now there. Notice how it says the boosted free plan. That's how it knows it comes with the extra stuff. All right, so you can click into it and see everything you need, like the project ID, which we're going to need for later. Once that's done, we can go ahead and click in our terminal and type in yarn dev. Okay, so once Sanity is installed, we can cd out of the studio into the main folder, and then we can type in yarn dev. Okay, and if you look, local 3000 is going to be our starter Next.js app right here. Amazing. Let's go ahead and set up Tailwind now. So this is our Next.js app. Now let's go ahead and set up Tailwind. So what I'm going to do, if you want to set up Tailwind, what you need to do is type in Tailwind Next.js, because Tailwind actually provided some really nice documentation and how Tailwind CSS with your Next app. So we're going to be using this as a reference for the following steps, but I can also walk you guys through it. So the first thing you want to do is to copy this npm, okay? And for me, I'm using yarn. So instead of npm install, what I'm going to say is yarn add-d and install these three things: Tailwind, post CSS, and auto prefixer. So I'm going to get that command ready and you can go ahead and hit enter. And all of this should go in the root of your folder, not the studio, not the smart contract folder, the Tinder Clone Blockchain folder. Awesome. Once that's done, I want to do the next command, which is just this npx Tailwind CSS init, which this will just initialize Tailwind to our project. And it'll also to create these two files, tailwind.config.js and postcss.config.js. So what you need to do is go ahead and find that tailwind.config, and you're going to need to add these two lines into your content array at module exports. So what I'm going to do is press enter here, paste, and there you go. It looks good. And so now it's in there. The last thing we need to do is put in these three directives. So you can copy this. This one's going to go in the global.css. Notice how there's a bunch of starter files here. We can go ahead and get rid of that and put the directives on top and hit save. Once that's done, let's reset our terminal and type in yarn dev again. And now our project is installed with Tailwind CSS. So now that Tailwind is set up, let's go ahead and set up our smart contract side of things. So in order to do that, let's open up our terminal again. And let's make sure we're inside our smart contract folder. So we'll cd into it. And then when you're in your smart contract folder, we're going to be using Hardhat. Okay. And to set up Hardhat, I'm just going to go into my terminal and type in npx Hardhat. Okay. And what you want to do is create a basic sample project, enter, add a git ignore, and just say sure. Awesome. So if you're unfamiliar with Hardhat, all it is an Ethereum development environment. And we use this to compile the contracts that we create to then deploy them to the network of our choice. Next thing you want to do is in this same folder, we want to do yarn add at open/contracts. Okay, so type in this command into your terminal and hit enter. What this will do is install OpenZeppelin. And if you're not sure what OpenZeppelin is, when you create a smart contract, we need a standard to follow. So the standard that we're going to be following, it's going to be called ERC 721. And that is the standard for non-fungible tokens. A term that you guys might have heard is ERC20, which works with fungible tokens or whenever real money is involved. So make sure you add Open Zeppelin, and let's go ahead and set up the smart contracts. So now if you look with hard hat initialized, if you look into the folders, let's make this bigger. With hard hat initialized, you're gonna see in the smart contract folder a couple of things. Notice the contracts, the scripts, everything else. So if you look at the contracts folder, you're greeted with this boilerplate code. All right, and there's also some extensions. Notice how it's all grayed out and all just one color. What you need to do if you see this is go to your extensions and type in Solidity. All right, you're gonna see something by Juan Blanco. Go ahead and install that. All this is an extension to provide Solidity support for VS Code. And Solidity is what we use to type smart contracts for Ethereum. Okay, so once it's installed, if I go back to the greeter.sol, notice how we have Solidity support now. Awesome. So as great as this is, we don't need it. We're gonna be making our own smart contract today. So I'm just gonna make a new Solidity file and I'm gonna call it Tinder ERC7 and make sure you add the .sol extension to make sure it's a Solidity file. Awesome. So once that's done, you always wanna use a license when you're making a Solidity contract. So what you need to do is just type in this right here. Awesome. The next thing you want to do is type in the version of Solidity that you're using. I'm going to say Pragma Solidity, and you can go with this. If you're watching this video, this is one of the current versions of Solidity you can use, which just signifies, hey, I want to tell my computer that I want a version of Solidity that is this and higher. Okay, cool. Next thing we need to do is remember how we installed Open Zeppelin. We're gonna add the import statements to import our standardized contract, which again is ERC721, which works with non-fungible tokens. Okay, next thing we have to do is let's set up our contract. But to start creating our smart contract, I'm gonna say contract and then the name of my contract. And then you can say is ERC721 URI storage. Okay, there we go. Awesome. So if this doesn't make any sense to you, if you guys are familiar with classes at all, you can think of this as class Tinder extends this. All right, to give you a direct example, it's saying class Ferrari extends car, which basically means that this Ferrari is going to be built off a object. So in this case, our contract is going to be built on top of the ERC720 standard. Okay. And now let's start coding up our contract. The first thing we're going to do is create a variable. So to create a variable in Solidity, you're going to need to type in and declare the type, which I'm going to say is uint256, and I'll call it Tinder token ID. If creating smart contracts is interesting to you, be on the lookout for our future tutorials coming out real soon. But for today, I'm going to be teaching you guys a little bit about creating smart contracts. So after you make that number variable, what we're going to do is set up this constructor. Okay, that's our construction. Next thing we're going to do is set up our function. All right, so once the constructor is done, let's go ahead and set up our actual function of our smart contract. And to create a function in Solidity, it's going to be similar to what you've seen with JavaScript. You can just say function mint NFT, the name of the function. And the only difference that you're going to notice is the way we type in our parameters. To create a function in Solidity, it's going to be similar to JavaScript in the sense that you say function and then the function name. The difference is this, is that you have to declare the type of the parameter. So this address here is the type of this parameter of user1, there's a user2, and then we have the token URI that we're also going to pass in. Another thing that you're going to see is that we label public on our functions. So awesome. Once that's done, our function is set up. Let's go ahead and type in the instructions of our function, which is just going to be this piece of code right here. All right, so just to break down what's going on, this _mint is a method that's actually just going to mint an NFT. Right, so just to talk about what this whole thing is supposed to do is we're going to be making the Tinder clone. Let's say we have Bob and she matches with someone named Jessica. If Bob and Jessica both like each other, what we're going to do is actually create an NFT representing that they matched. And this NFT representing the match will go to both of their wallet addresses, which is super cool. So this function is going to mint those NFT for those two users. So this first section over here is _mint, which actually is the minting of the NFTs to this user that we passed in. So notice how it says user1, and we're going to give that NFT an ID. All right, and this is just the variable that we set up earlier, which let's say it starts at 0. I'm minting NFT for Bob and with the token ID of 0. Cool. The next direct line is the set the token URI. You can look at the token URI as a JSON that has the information of the NFT. So this is where this token URI is where the information will go of the image, and let's say the description, which you'll see on OpenSea. So what this method does, set token URI, is going to grab an NFT with this token ID, which we know was 0 that we set up, and it's going to pass in the information like the description and the image of it. Afterwards, we're going to increment the token ID because the next time I mint, I don't want to give this the same ID of 0. We already have one. So this will ensure that it's going to be the next ID. Awesome. Over here, it's going to be the same exact thing. So if you understood what I just said, let's go over it. It's the mint function, which is going to mint an NFT to this user, passing in the token ID, which now is going to be 1, by the way. And then we're going to set the token URI, which is going to find an NFT with that ID of 1 and pass in tokens information like the image and description, and of course, increment it. Awesome. I'm super excited because this is creating a smart contract that we're actually going to deploy to the network on the blockchain. So again, if you're excited about this, be on the lookout for more tutorials by Clever Programmer coming out soon. Cool. So once you have this code, you successfully created our smart contract for this project. The next thing you're going to need to do is hop over to scripts, and we're going to create a deploy script to actually deploy this contract to the blockchain. Awesome. So let's delete this sample script, which we're not going to really need. And in that scripts folder, let's create a new file. And I'm going to call it deploy.js. Makes sense. Okay, now in the deploy.js, we want to make sure we're getting ethers from hardhat, which we set up. And what I want to do is set up a function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this function main, and this main function is going to be asynchronous. And we're going to set up a couple things here. Okay, cool. So we're going to set up 2 variables here. The first one is going to be called Tinder Factory. All this is going to do is get the smart contract that we created with this name, and it should be the same name of your contract. So double check that. Once we get that contract, the next thing we want to do is to take that contract and deploy it. Okay, and when we deploy that, we're going to store it in this variable right here. All right, the next thing we want to do is let's console log the Tinder contact address that we get back. And if you save that address that it shows, that is going to be the address of where the contract lives on the blockchain, which you might want to save for the future. So after that's done, let's actually run our main function, and we can do that by typing this. If our request to deploy is successful, then we're going to exit. If not, we'll catch the error and display the console log with the error and then exit with 1. Awesome. And that's the deploy.js. Okay, so once you set up your script, the next thing you want to do is set up Alchemy. So if you're unfamiliar what Alchemy is, it essentially gives us developers the tools to communicate with the blockchain itself. You can think of it as the API that's going to help us make requests to do stuff on the blockchain. Okay, so open up your browser and let's go ahead and set up Alchemy. So head over to alchemy.com. We can go ahead and log in. And what we can do is click this create app, give it the same name, and you want to make sure you're doing Ethereum. And what we're going to be working on is not the mainnet, is we're going to be using Rinkeby, which is just a test network for Ethereum. The reason why we're using Rinkeby is because if we deploy to the mainnet, we're going to have to use real Ethereum to pay for the gas fees of deploying our contract. So again, we don't have as much to do that. We're going to be using the testnet Rinkeby because I'll show you guys how to get fake Ethereum that you can use and play with. So make sure the chain is Ethereum, the network is Rinkeby, and go ahead and click create. Once that's done, you can click on your Tinder clone blockchain project, click view key, and what we're going to need to save is this HTTP key. Go ahead and click copy. And in your smart contract folder, at the root of the smart contract folder, we're going to make a .env. Okay, and in that env file, we're going to just type this in and say Alchemy API URL equals, and it's going to be the key that you type. And another thing that we're going to show you guys, another thing that we need to keep in our environment variables is going to be this Rinkeby private key, right? Which is going to be the private key of your wallet that you're going to use to drain and pay for the deployment of the smart contract. It'll make more sense in a bit, but let's worry about the Alchemy API URL, which I said is going to be this API key. So go ahead and copy that over. Okay, go ahead and click save, and let's talk about how to get the private key of your wallet address. Okay, so I'm just going to make this bigger, and what we're going to do is, if you guys aren't familiar, we're going to be using Metamask as our wallet. So what you need to do is make sure you have the Metamask Chrome extension. So I'm going to set it up here, which I don't have it set up on this browser. So I'll set it up with you guys. Oops. So you're going to type in Metamask extension for Chrome. And if you click this, you can see add to Chrome right here. Okay, awesome. There's our MetaMask. It has been added to Chrome. Now we can go ahead and get started, and we can just create a wallet. Awesome. We'll put in a password, and this is just a burner wallet for me, so I'm just going to put in whatever. Okay, this is how to secure your wallet. Whenever you make a wallet, there's going to be a secret recovery phrase that is like 12 words. Don't share that to anybody because that is the master key to your wallet and funds. So these are my secret words for this wallet. I can go ahead and copy this and save this. It's okay if you guys know this, as I am never going to use this wallet. Awesome. So I'm going to next. And again, we just have to put in those words. So mine was this. And again, I'm just going to skip up the setup. This is how you set up Metamask. Okay, once that's done, you successfully set up your Metamask. Awesome. And now you can X this out. And if you just look at your extensions, go ahead and pin this so it's just easily available. And if you click your Metamask, this is it. This is my account. As you can see, I have 0 Ethereum, and that's because that's how much Ethereum I have on the mainnet. And we need to be on the Rinkeby testnet. So what you guys need to do to get on the Rinkeby testnet is to go ahead and go to settings, go to advanced, click on show test networks. All right, turns this on. And then when you click on this drop down menu, you should be able to click Rinkeby, and there we go. Awesome. So now you might be wondering, all right, Lance, if you have to use test Ethereum to deploy your contract to pay for the gas fees, how do I get Ethereum from my wallet? I got you. Okay, what you need to do is copy this and type it in the browser. This is called a faucet, and what this will do is send you 0.1 test Ethereum that we can use. Okay, so it says please connect your wallet. We can do that now that we set it up. Click connect. This is my wallet address, account 1, next, connect, and there you go. It's going to automatically populate your wallet address here. Make sure the network says Ethereum Rinkeby. Make sure you click 0.1 test Ethereum. We don't need the 10 test link. Click I'm not a robot. You have to do the not annoying CAPTCHA at all. Let's click send request. Then it's going to say waiting for confirmation. And once that's done, we should see that we have the test Ethereum. Okay, request complete. Now we can see if we have Ethereum. If I click my wallet, look at that, 0.1 Ethereum, 0.1 ETH. So 0.1 ETH should be enough to deploy our contract. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to repeat this process 6 to 7 times. I'll have that 0.6 Ethereum, which is nice. So now to do the part that we originally wanted to do, which is to get our private key of this wallet so that we can use it, we can click account details and click export private key. Type in the MetaMask password of this account, and there you go. This is our private key. Make sure you don't share this with anybody. Copy, done, and bring it over to your env file. Paste it so in your .env file. Awesome. Okay, next thing you want to do is in your terminal, let's actually run hardhat and deploy our smart contract by typing this command. Awesome. So what I wrote is npx hardhat run scripts /deploy.js /network Rinkeby. All that's saying is basically use hardhat to run our deploy.js and deploy it to the Rinkeby test network like I mentioned before. Okay, and before you actually run that command, we also need to set up our hardhat config. So to do that, we can clean this up a bit by erasing all of this code, lines 3 to 8. And then from here, we need to require this. All right, so this you can keep. Next, we need to require this. And if you don't have this Dontev installed, go ahead and install it to your terminal. And then after that, let's actually import our keys, our environment variables like this. So all we did so far was use this to get access to our .env files. Then we're actually getting our env variables over here and storing it like this. So. And the next thing you want to do is have this export. Okay, so in this export, make sure it's Solidity 0.84 just to double check it's the latest version at the time of this recording. And in the network's key here, set it to Rinkeby, and the URL will be the Alchemy one, and the account will be the private key that we set up. So essentially, this private key, whoever you set it up as, is going to be paying for any of the gas fees for our app and as well as deploying our contract. So go ahead and hit save. Now that it's set up, then we can run this npx hardhat command. Let's hit run. Okay, let's double check this error. Error invalid URL. Okay, and just double check that it's the right URL. It's the HTTP one from Alchemy. I'm gonna hit save, go back to hardhat, and let's try to run that again. Okay, there we go. Nice. And we got our Tinder contract address. So go ahead and save this so you remember where our contract is located on the blockchain. And with that is how we set up the smart contract folder. So now let's get to coding up the front end. All right, everybody. So once the smart contract side of things is set up, we can go ahead and start working on our Next.js app. So in this section, make sure your terminal is running so that you can see your Next.js app. And let's hop over to this pages folder and click on index.js. Right, what we could do is actually highlight everything from lines 7 to lines 67. All right, so all it's left with is should just be this return. And for now, we can actually just clean out the top of, okay, cool. So what we do want to put here is our divs that we're going to set up. All right, so you notice there's an error because there's nothing here, but what we're going to do is just this. Okay, so I'm going to make a div and I'm going to give it the class name of style dot wrapper. All right. If you guys know Tailwind and all, this is how we use Tailwind CSS. We're going to have predefined class names that have styling attached to the class name. If you use Bootstrap at all, it's going to be very similar. So at the moment, we don't have style wrapper set up, but I'm just setting it up now, and then we're going to create the styling for it later. Okay. So this is my wrapper. It's going to have the whole component in here. And within that wrapper, we'll have the header component. Okay, which is going to be header. And like I said before, we don't have a header component just yet, so we can go ahead and comment this out. Okay, the next thing you need to do is right under this header component, there's actually another div that we need. This one is going to have a class name, style.cards container. This container div is going to have our card component as well that we're going to make. Okay, and like I said before, these components don't exist. I'm just setting that up so we can comment that out. There we go. That's going to be our index. So the next main thing we're going to need to do is make our style object. Like I said before, this class name will take the styling of the style object that I set up, which is going to be this. There's going to be a Tailwind cheat sheet that you can look up, and it's going to be obvious what it does here. So this is the CSS for it, the wrapper and cards container. And when I say style.wrapper, this div will take that CSS. And that's what makes Tailwind awesome, because you can scale and code up CSS a lot easier, and we should see nothing here. Awesome. So now let's actually make our components. The first one I'm going to make is our header component. So let's go ahead and make that folder and make sure it is in the root. I'm going to say components. In that components folder, let's go ahead and make a header.js. Okay. And in the header.js, I'm going to go ahead and save this command. There we go. We have our header component. Okay. And from here, I'm going to set up the divs that go along with it. Feel free to pause the video if you need to get the divs. Okay, so I just finished typing up the menu items. So just to take a quick break and talk about what we did, I made a div class name, which is going to be the wrapper of this whole header component. Then we have a div with main, which is going to have the image of the logo, the nice fire logo of Tinder. And we have the Tinder text, which is going to say just the name of the company, which of course is Tinder. And then on the left menu, we have, which you'll see at the top, products, learn, safety, support, download. If you guys hop over to tinder.com, this is what you would see in the menu. So that's the left menu. On the right, we'll have English and the login button. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that next. It's going to be last name. And like I said, this will be the right menu. And in the right menu, there's just this one text that just says English. And basically what you'll see on the right menu is the login button. But if the user is logged in, we should see that user's account information on the right instead of the login button. So to do that, we're going to set up something called conditional rendering. So I'm just going to add that in right now. And like I said, feel free to pause the video if you need to stop and take a look. Okay. And just to clean this up a bit, let's take a look at what I wrote. But like I said, we have div English here, which is just, and it's usually in all caps. And to the right of the English on the right menu, we'll see the login button. But if we are logged in, we should see all this stuff right here. And we should see the current account's information. At the moment, we don't have all that set up yet, so we can comment this out. And we're going to bring it back when I do set up Moralis later on. But for now, we just need the login button. And just a note for later, the user logged in, the button is swapped for current account. Okay, awesome. So we'll save that. And then I'm just going to move my browser. And now let's actually import this component to our index.js. So to do that, we can actually bring this back out. And at the top here, we can say this import header from components header. Okay. And we get the styles not defined here because if you remember in our header.js, we set up a bunch of styles, but we never made that. So let's go ahead and type up those styles. So all we need to do that is come to the top of the component and say const style. Here, we can use Tailwind to set up the styling for each of these class names, like the wrapper, the main, the text, right? So I'm just gonna set it up one by one. So we have the wrapper, this is the CSS. We're gonna add some flex properties to this. And for the main, we're gonna have an item center and a gap 4. Tinder text, it's just gonna be semi-bold and make sure it has the cursor pointer over it. For the left menu, we're just gonna have a gap of 8 pixels and the text is large. And then for the menu items, we're gonna have a cursor pointer, and when we hover it, the text should be red. And here is the duration of that hover. Awesome. Okay, next up is the right menu, which is gonna be similar to left menu, except it's gonna have a 3 gap and an item center. And the last thing we'll need for now is the auth button, which is the login button itself. Okay, and this one is going to be background white, and the text is gonna be red, and when you hover over it, it's gonna change. So if I save, taking a look at the browser, just gonna have a good idea. There we go. There is our Tinder. Awesome. So there it is. Next thing we're gonna do is we need to add the logo onto here. So what we need to do that is set up the image. And I have the image commented out. in order to use image in Next.js, we have to do a couple imports. So we have to import image from next image to actually see what we're working with. The next thing I want to do is to import the fire from our assets. All right, you guys might not have assets, but if you can clone it to our repository, we'll provide you with the assets folder with all the pictures you need. Okay, cool. So this fire is the logo of the Tinder app. So let's comment out the image, and now we can actually insert the necessary stuff for that. Okay, and all you need to do is add this to the image, which is going to give the source of the fire, of the logo, add the alt property, and actually give it a height and width. If I hit save, there it is. There is our Tinder fire logo. Looks very nice. And if you remember, we are going to come back to this when we set up our context. And there we go. This is our nice Tinder app. And just to show you that the login button is going to change when I log in. So if I click login, it's not going to work because it's not defined. But if I clicked it and I logged in, a user here. So let me show you what that might look like. Now we can actually set that up now that you understand what this is supposed to be. So I'll just actually erase this login, and then we can bring this back in. Okay, so like I said before, this whole thing just means if there is a current account, load up the styling with Moralis and have all of this passed in. But if there is not, just have the login button. So at the moment, we actually don't have an image from Moralis, so we can comment that out. And we need to add the styling, which is just going to be these two things right here. Okay, and we're going to get current account is not defined, and that's because we don't have current account set up. So for now, we can just make a variable called const current account and set this equal to our wallet address, just for now. All right, so now it's going to be static. Later on, we'll make it more. So now taking a look at that. All right, we can see that over there set up. If you look, this is what it looked like if I log in. We have our wallet address abbreviated, and also our login button is now swapped out for a log out button. Okay, so now if I were to remove a current user, let's say we don't have a current user, or in other words, this doesn't exist, it's empty, then we have conditional rendering to take out that little thing and set back login back in there. Okay, amazing. And with that said, that's the header component. All right, after you guys finish the header component, let's work on the next thing. So going back to index, that we have this card component that we need to make. This card component is going to be what we see on the Tinder app right here. It's going to be this nice square that's going to hold the person that we can swipe right or swipe left on. Okay, let's go ahead and make that component. I'm going to go into my components folder and let's just make it right here. So I'm going to say card.js. Cool. And then we're going to do the RAFCE to make the component, clean this up a little bit, and we should be good to go. Awesome. There we go. So there's the card. Next thing we're going to have to do is actually install React icons. So what we're going to do is temporarily stop our terminal and just do yarn add react-icons. Once that's done, we can do yarn dev again, load up our page. It's already running, refresh this, and here we go, it's back up online. So now that we have React icons, let's actually import one of the icons over here. Cool, import this Tinder from React icons, SI, and now let's work on our divs. So the first one I'm going to make is this one right here. This one's gonna be our wrapper that we usually do, style.wrapper. And inside that style.wrapper, we're gonna have a component that we're gonna set up later, and this is gonna be that card header. Okay, so I'm just gonna make the card header component. And of course that we don't have this yet, so we'll save it. After that, we have another div in here. This one is the card main. After the card main, we're gonna have another div here. It's gonna be style.nomorewrapper. Awesome. And then here, we can add that React icon. Okay, then we also need this div right here for no more text. Just show that there's no more profiles in our location if there is not. And we can just format it like this. If there is more, then we can do this class 2 curly brackets and do styles.swipes container, the container that's going to hold all our swipeable things. And once you make that div, we can add this piece of code here. It's our cards.data.map. We don't have this functionality yet, but just know that in this container, we want to map through our cards data, and for every single card, we want to make the Tinder card item. So we don't have that set up yet, so I'm just going to keep it commented out. And the last thing we're going to need is this card footer component. Okay, and again, we're going to be setting that up later. Nice. So there is our component. Let's start working on the styling with Tailwind and say style equals our object. Okay, and then for the wrapper, we're going to add this CSS. We're going to put a flexbox property of column, rounded edges, overflow hidden. And then for card main, this piece of code. And then for card main, we'll add this flex1 relative justify content to center it. And the no more wrapper is going to have this. Okay, and then the rest of the CSS will be like so. All right, to take a moment to take a look. For the Tinder logo, you're just going to make the text red and add that. And for the no more text, that should be white. And for the swipes container, we're going to do an overflow hidden and get the full width. All right, awesome. And hit save. And now let's start working on the components within here. So let's work on the card header. So what I'm going to do is go into my components, make a new file. This one is card. Okay, set up your card header and let's do some code. So the things that we're going to import into the card header, which is at the top of our card, is these images right here. We want to be able to get the profile pic from the assets folder and the logo from our assets folder. The next thing we're going to need is the notifications icon from React. We need to get import image from Next so that we can use images, and that'll be it for now. Okay, now I'm going to set up our card header component, and all we need to do is clean it up. So give this a class name, and you guessed it, this is going to be our style dot. Okay, and here I'm going to actually use the image already, and we're going to pass this image some props. So for the source, I'm going to put profile pic for now, and then for the rest of it, we're just going to give it the CSS property. So width of 40, a height of 40, an alt of profile pic, and this is the class name for the image. Awesome. The next image I'm going to add is actually just the logo. And of course, the source of this is going to be the logo itself. Okay, with a height of 150 and a width of 200, and give this the class name of that. And the last thing here is going to be the bottom. We're going to add another div, and this is going to be the flex items. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up a bit, and there you go. So we're making a div called flex items. We're just going to make a div which is just going to literally not take a style object. We're just going to directly style it like this and flex it center, and it's going to contain the notifications and this right here. Okay, so hit save. And now that we finished the card header, we can go implement it back in. So going back to our index.js, let's bring in the card by importing it. Import card from components. And before we save that, we actually need to go to card and import the card header now. Import card header. Okay, I'll save that and I'll save this. And then we get an error. Make sure this says style, not styles. Okay, and then of course in our card header, don't forget to put the style object of the card header, which again, I'm just gonna put it right here. I don't want to spend too much time on CSS because we got a Tinder app to build. And there you go. So all it is just adding the wrapper CSS, making sure that the profile image covers it and it's rounded. We have the logo and just add the rest of these. So take a quick look at it. I pressed Alt-Z. You can see this is the styling that we're going to add. Now if I save A, there is supposed to represent you, Tinder, notifications, and no more profiles in your locations because we don't have any users set up just yet. So there you go. We have our Tinder card, we have the header. Let's work on the footer next. So if you remember, the footer is located in the card itself, which is going to go in the bottom right here. And that's going to have your options to swipe right or left. So let's work on that. So in your components folder, make card footer.js. Okay, and here RAFCE. We'll set up, clean up your component, and we can go start making those divs. Okay, so now that we finished the card footer, the only thing we need to make now is the Tinder card item component. The Tinder card item component is going to be a component that shows that card's data. So like it's a picture of me, my age, and it's going to have all the reactions that you can have or go back. So let's create that by making another component. I'll call this one Tinder card.js. Awesome. So set up your component. Okay, cool. So the first thing I'm going to do in this Tinder card item component is import all the React icons. Okay, there you go. It's going to be these right here. This is going to be all the reactions. From there, let's start setting up our code. So from here in this div, we're actually going to give it the class name of style.wrapper again. The interesting about Tinder card item is that we're going to be importing Tinder card from an npm package. For this app, we're going to be installing an npm package called React Tinder Card. What that package does is lets us code and incorporate that swipe or swipe left functionality in React. So what we're going to do is go into my terminal and type in yarn add react-tinder card. Okay, once that's done, another thing I'm going to add to this import is the Tinder card that I was talking. Okay, so import Tinder card from React Tinder card. And once you do that, I want to tell my React app that everything here is part of that Tinder card that I can swipe right or left in. So I want to wrap that inside the Tinder card. So I'll say Tinder card, close it. And like I said, we want to put the wrapper. So everything inside here is part of the Tinder card. Makes sense? Let's move on. So with the Tinder card, it actually comes with a few attributes that we need to set up. First things first is let's set up the class name style.tinderCardWrapper. Okay. Another attribute that we're going to add is a unique attribute to this Tinder card that we're getting. And it's going to be called prevent swipe. And inside as the value, we're going to put quotes up, quotes down. What this does is when I take my card and drag it up or swipe it down, nothing will happen. We're going to prevent that functionality from triggering anything. because the only functionality we want is the swipe right and the swipe left. So to do that, we set this up. Next, we're going to add another attribute that's called onSwipe, which is the function that we are going to run when we swipe. Okay, and the function is called actually onSwipe. Okay, and obviously we don't have the onSwipe function just yet. So for now, let's just make that function here. What this function is, it's our onSwipe function that takes in a direction, and if the direction is right, we want to handle that right swipe. This handle right swipe isn't a function on my component, but it's a function that we're going to be making later and then pulling from our context. So let's comment that out for now. Okay, coming back to line 23, let's continue building this out. So the next div inside the wrapper is going to be a div, and we're going to call it style.space. Okay, and in style.space is actually going to be our div that holds our name. Here is going to be where we put our name, and for now, let's make it static by saying my name. Okay, underneath my name, I'll have a span, which is just going to hold my age, and I'll put 99 because I am almost 100 years old. Okay, next to the div called style.space, we're going to make another div, and in this div, this is where the wallet address div is going to go. So style.wallet address, and of course, that is not quotes, that's just going to be class name. So then inside that wallet address div, this is where that user's wallet address will go. So if there's a user, let's call her Danielle Smith, and it's going to show her picture, her name, and actually her wallet address. So for now, I'm gonna hard code it by putting my wallet address in here. And of course, when we do pull it dynamically, we're gonna abbreviate it. So something like that. Okay, so that's the wallet address. The next thing I'm gonna make is a div for the reactions container. And as you can assume, this container is gonna hold all the reactions that we can have for a person, whether that's liking them. So I'm just gonna set up the first one. The first reaction is gonna be this, which if we click it, it's gonna trigger a go back function, which again is not set up yet, a go back function. Okay, so each of these divs inside the reactions container is going to represent a different reaction, and there should be 4 of these guys. So I'm just gonna fill the rest of them out now, and I'm just gonna clean up my code. Okay, so this is all the reactions. Take a moment to see the different code that I have here. Okay, just gonna clean up my code a little bit, add an extra div, and here it is. Okay, last thing we have to do now is just set up our styling. So I'm just gonna make that style object, and I'm start slow and then slowly populate the style. So the first thing I wanna think about is the Tinder card wrapper, which is just gonna have the full width and full height and give it the absolute property. I'm just gonna have the wrapper with also full width and height, overflow hidden, and make sure you don't repeat the background, and of course center it and keep it the position relative if we make the other one absolute. Okay, next is just the space. It's gonna have a flex property of justify between, and then it's just styling of all the little details like the name, the age, the wallet address, and then from there we're gonna style the reactions container that's gonna hold all of our options, which is gonna have a flex property of justify between with full, pixels 2, and a gap of 5. Buttons container, and then I'm going to add the rest of them, which is the button symbol, the back colors, the X colors, the star colors, and the lightning color. Okay, so go ahead and save that. We're not going to see anything yet on our app because we need to import it to our card. So what we're going to do is actually import the Tinder card item. And if you looking into line 27, we have our swipes container, and we're going to be mapping through our cards data. And our cards data is essentially our list of users. We don't have that set up yet. So what I'm going to do instead is let me show you guys what one Tinder card item would look like. The difference between now and before is that this data in this component is static and that there's also no background image. So once we set up that Tinder card item, go ahead and click save and make sure your terminal is running down below so that when you hit save, there it is. Like I said, this is an example of what the card would look like, but as you can see, there's no picture in the background because we haven't set that up yet. So let's do that right now. So hopping back to Tinder card item, if you see where the wrapper is, this is where that background image is supposed to go. So if I want to put that background image there, and underneath the class name, let's add some inline styling to insert a background image. So to do that, I'm gonna have to write something like this, background image. And later on, we're gonna replace this with something dynamic. But for now, we can just type in URL, quotes, and then let's get a picture in there. So just for fun, let's go to unsplash.com, get a stock image. I'm gonna type in dog. Any dog lovers in chat, comment down below if you have a pet. So what I'm gonna do is copy image address and paste that right here, hit save, okay? And if all is, there it is. Beautiful Lance, and he is 99 years old. That's a dog, and hits his wallet address. Isn't this awesome? And look at that, we can actually drag it left, drag it right, and if you press left and there's nothing left, it's gonna show that there's no more profiles in your location. And now, if you refresh, the picture comes back and our front end is pretty much done. The next thing we need to do is start setting up a lot of the back end. So go ahead and swipe right on my beautiful dog here, and let's get on and let's move on. So now the next thing we should start doing is setting up our context folder. So what I'm going to do is go over to your project, create a folder called context, and in this context folder we're going to make a file called Tinder context.js. Okay, enter. Awesome. So what we're going to do in this file is we're going to set up using React's context API. All this does is lets us pull data from anywhere in our component, as opposed to the other way, which is passing down data down through props. We'll have access to anything we put into our context anywhere in our project. So to get started doing that, I'm going to import a couple of things like these three things: use state, create context, and use effect. Try that explanation again. So the next thing we need to do is, after we import these three things, is I want to install Faker.js. If you're not familiar, Faker.js is an NPM package that we can use to generate a random name, and we'll be using it to generate a random name. So to install it, you're gonna have to do this command. So to install it, you're gonna have to type in this command, yarn add Faker.js/Faker. Okay, make sure you do that in your root folder, and once that's done, we can actually import Faker from Faker.js. Okay, cool. We have that done. And whenever you're setting up context, the next thing you need to do is declare the variable that's going to hold that context and set it equal to create context parentheses. Okay, the next thing you need to do is set up that provider. So I'm just going to say export const Tinder provider and set it equal to the function. Cool. A couple of things we need to do is we also want to be exporting the Tinder context as well, because we're going to use it later. And this Tinder provider is going to take in children. Okay, awesome. And within this provider, eventually we're going to have a return here that we're going to set up later. Okay, what we want to set up in this provider is a couple use states, which I'll explain as I paste it in. So I set up 3 use states here. Each of these things are going to be keeping track of different variables. One of them is the cards data, which is essentially each user that we're able to swipe through labeled as a card. So if you remember, when I refresh, this nice picture of my dog is a card. All right, so I set up 3 use states here, and with these 3 states, I'm going to be keeping track of different things. So the first one I'm keeping track of is the cards data. You can think of the cards data as the users that I can swipe through. So if you look back at the app with my nice dog Lance, this is considered. So this would be 1 card in the data, and at the moment now there's 0 cards data and left in the cards data. So that's what we're going to set up with state here. Next one is the current account and also current user. Awesome. Okay, with that out of the way, the next thing I want to do is in your return is let's set up the Tinder context provider. So what we need to do is type in Tinder context dot provider, and in between that provider it's going to take children as well. Okay, the next thing we need to do is inside add a couple attributes to this Tinder provider, and the attribute is going to be value. Okay, keep this in mind. Everything inside this value is going to be what we pass in to make that variable. Okay, so for now we'll leave it blank, but I'll come back to that in a second. What we have to do next is actually wrap our entire app with the Tinder provider that we set up. So to do that, we need to go into this underscore app.js, and we need to, and to get the provider, remember we exported it, so that means we're able to import that Tinder provider. That's going to be from our context folder. Okay, now that's imported, we can actually place it down here, and then in between that is where our app is going to go. Hit save, and that should be good for now. Okay, with that, our context is set up, and we're going to be adding way more to this as we go. All right, guys, once you set up your context, the next thing that we're going to start adding to this context is actually Moralis. If you guys haven't heard of Moralis, it is a web development platform. And if you ever heard of Firebase, Moralis is essentially the Firebase of crypto. All right, Moralis gives you managed backend that you can use for your blockchain project. And one of the key features that we're going to use in Moralis today is authenticating a user. So the first thing we're going to have to do is go to your terminal and install Moralis. So I'm going to hop into my terminal here. You can type in yarn add react-moralis. Once that's done, we can come to the top here and import use Moralis from Moralis. Just like that. Okay. And just like we would with React hooks, we want to set up that instance of Moralis. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. We want to pull these 4 things from Moralis so that we can use them in our app. Authenticate is authenticated, user and Moralis equals use Moralis. Awesome. Okay. What we can do next is set up a bunch of different functions. So the first one I'm going to make is const check wallet connection. And this is going to be an asynchronous function. And what this function is going to do is literally what it sounds like. It's going to check if a wallet is connected. The really awesome thing about Moralis is that it actually knows in the background if a wallet is connected to our blockchain app that we're creating. So if is authenticated, which we're pulling from Moralis, is true, that we are connected, then we're going to get that user address and set our current account to the address. And afterwards, we're going to make a request to create that user profile down below. And if you remember, our current account is just going to hold our address, and the difference with current user, it's going to have all the user data in current user. Okay. And of course, we need an else statement here, set current account to none, because there shouldn't be an account if no one is authenticated. Awesome. So here's the next function that we're going to create. It's going to be called connect wallet. So if the first one is checking if a wallet's connected, this one is literally what it sounds like. This one is literally just going to connect the wallet itself. So if we are not authenticated, that's what this exclamation point means, set up a try catch, and we're going to await authenticate with the signing message of login using Moralis. And of course, if anything goes wrong, we're going to catch that and print that error. Okay. The last thing we need to do is disconnect the wallet. So the disconnect wallet is a smaller function. It's just going to look like this, where it's asynchronous like the others, and it's going to await for the Moralis user to log out and also set the current account to blank on our end. Okay. Once that's done, let's actually use this use effect hook that we pulled at the top here. And I'm just going to say use effect. Takes two parameters. Going to be the side effect that we want to perform plus this dependency. What we want to do in this use effect is actually just check if the wallet is connected. Anytime we load the component, we should be checking if the wallet is connected. The next thing I want to do is to check if it's authenticated. And if it is authenticated, I want to grab that user data doing user.get and also get that same for the current user. So if it's authenticated, then we also want to make a request for that data. Notice how this one says request users data and this one requests current user data. This function, it doesn't exist yet, but we're going to use this to grab all the users that we can swipe left and right in, except for us. Otherwise, we'd be swiping on ourselves because we're in the database as well. So we're actually making a separate call in this function, which is just going to grab me and not everybody else. So this is to ensure that we can separate the user that is signed in versus the rest of the people that we have on our database. Cool. And then in the dependency module, we just want to check whenever is authenticated changes, this use effect is going to run. The next thing I want to do is add in those functions to our value here. Because remember, I said earlier, whatever we pass into value of this provider, we can actually use these functions anywhere in our app when we need it. All right, so we're also going to get current account and current user, and that should be good for now. One more thing that you have to do when working with Moralis is that you actually have to wrap your app around their provider so that we can essentially wrap Moralis around our app. Just like we did with Tinder provider, go into your underscore. And what we want to do is import the Moralis provider from -Moralis, and let's wrap our app with that same provider. Okay, take our app and paste it inside here. And I'm just going to clean it up a bit. There you go. And we should be good to go. Nice. So now that Moralis is set up, what I'm going to do is hop over to the header component, because now that we created our contacts, we can actually apply some of the functions that we set up. So what I want to do now is come to the top here, and we're going to import a couple of things. The first thing that I want to import is use context from React. This lets us use any of the context files that we created. It's a React hook that lets us set it up. Okay. The next thing we want to do is import the Tinder context itself. This is what we're going to pass in to use context to signify that, hey, I want all of the variables inside here that we created inside this context. Okay. And then coming down to the header at the top level of our function, just paste in this. All this means is I want to use these specific variables, the connect wallet, the current account, and the disconnected wallet as our context, and set that equal to use context, because these are the things that I want to pull from that page. Okay, so now that's there, we could actually use this. Now remember how we have conditional rendering here, where a current account is this. We can actually start to remove that because we have that current account. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to update this div here, and it should just look like this. All I'm doing is adding some more conditional rendering that if there is a current account, we're going to change the styling of the wrapper. If there's not, we're just going to keep the background transparent fixed. Okay. Awesome. You can also comment back out this image, and now our on clicks that we set up earlier should work, like the disconnect wallet and then the on click for the connect wallet should work as well. So remember to reset your terminal because we installed Moralis. So I'm just going to do just that. Okay, I know why I'm getting this error. It's because we installed React-Moralis, but we also need to install just Moralis itself. So don't, in your terminal, also do yarn add. Okay, now let's try it. Okay, I'm going to do yarn dev. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot. When we put in our provider, we need to make a app. We need to make a project on the Moralis website itself, and we have to include that in here inside the provider. So I forgot to do that. So let's go ahead and set that up. So go ahead and go to moralis.io, and this is how we're going to set it up. Just do sign up for free, create an account. Let's create a new server. And if you remember, we're not doing this on the mainnet. We're going to use the test net, and we're going to use Rinkeby. We're going to add an instance. Select your region. Let's do New York. Oh yeah, when we should name this Tinder Blockchain, and we're going to add the instance. Okay, cool. This is a really cool thing that Moralis does, is that it shows you the servers that you have. And if you look, Moralis has so many other things that you could do, such as different plugins that you can add by going to the plugin store. You can also implement cloud functions here, which is awesome. There's a lot of things that Moralis does underneath the hood that makes this experience of you developing on the blockchain. Okay, awesome. So that's the dashboard. We don't really need to do any of that. We can just go to view details, and what we need is the server URL and the application ID. Okay, yeah, so we just need the server URL and the app ID. Okay, so you can literally write that here, server URL, paste in that. Once that's done, the next one is the app ID, which is just going to be this. Paste that in, save, stick in our app. Okay, so no major errors. If I click login, let's see what happens. Nice, look at that. When I clicked login, on my MetaMask popped up. You just put in your password. Okay, hit next, connect. And this is the await authenticated message that we set up that we can see here. Click sign, letting Moralis know that they have permission with this wallet. And we have this. Request user data is not defined, and that's fine because we haven't set that up. At least we know the login is working, so we can continue working on that. Let's go. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly disconnect. Yeah, so this error is normal. That's because we don't have the request user's data set up just yet. But after you put in the information to the provider, Moralis is set up. Okay. Like I said, if you see this error, that's totally fine. That's because we don't have this request users data function or this request current user data. If you remember, this use effect is constantly checking if the wallet is connected. So it can't complete its task. So for now, if you don't want to see this error, let's actually just comment that use effect out, and our beautiful page is back. So the next step that we're going to do now is set up Sanity. Sanity is our database, which is going to store all the different users, including you, so that we can pull that data and actually get these requests working. Okay, so to set up Sanity, that's going to be in our Studio folder. Okay, go to your Studio folder, hop into the schemas portion, and click on the schemas.js. Here you're going to see the template for creating a schema, which I'm going to clean up right now. Okay, once that's done, any schema that we create, we should import here so that it can get concat to our schema types. So here at this point, I'd start thinking of what do I want to store in my database? And like I said, I want to store users. So in my schemas folder, let's create a file, and I'll call this user schema.js, like so. And to set up this file, we need to write export const user schema, the same name, equals the object of what we want user object to look like. So it's going to take in some keys and values that I'm going to write now, and I'll explain it in a second. Cool. So the first three things here is just the name of our schema, the type that it is, notice how it's a document, and the title of it, which is going to be capital users. The fields is what are the actual fields or properties of a user. Right, so if you think about it, the first field that I care about in a user is going to be the name. All right, and when you do that, you have to identify the type, which is a string, and the title, which is just the capital version. Okay, another thing that's important is going to be a user's wallet address. Okay, as a bonus, we're going to keep track of the profile image that they can have, that the users can have, which is nice. And the last thing is going to be the likes. Okay, the likes are important because every single time I like a user, so if you look to the right, if you like my pug here, that user is going to be registered in this array of the users that I liked. So that's why in here, you're going to see this reference to the user. All right, so it's going to be filled with users that you liked inside here, and it's going to have a reference to that user. Okay, so all of these fields are what's important to the user, and make sure you're exporting them because back in the schema.js, we're going to be importing it. All right, so what we're going to do is simply just import that user schema from the path here, and in this .concat, since it's the only thing, we can just put user schema here like so. Awesome. And there you go. Our Sanity database is structured and set up and good to go. All right, so once you made that schema.js file and setting up the user schema, the next thing we want to do is let's make a lib folder. So going to the top level of my app again, let's make a folder, not in Studio, up here. Let's call it lib. Now in that lib folder, we're gonna make a file and we're gonna call it sanity.js. We just want to import Sanity client from @Sanity client, and we're gonna also export const the actual Sanity client itself. And if you see something like this process.env Sanity project ID, we actually need to set that up as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to make a new file, not in the lib folder, at the root of our project. And we'll see env.local. Sorry, going to be .env.local. And we can hop back over to Sanity, get that project ID and say something like this, sanity_project equals that project ID equals this. So once you get your project ID, the next thing you want to do is hop over to API, click add token. You can just say whatever you want for the name and click editor, hit save. This line of text is what we want, and we can say sanity_token question equals and that whole string. Awesome. So save, and now we have that env file so that when we go to lib, this is actually going to use the process.env file. Okay. So once that's done, the next thing we need to do is set up a bunch of our API routes. These API routes is what we're going to use to communicate with our Sanity database and pull what we need from them. So what I need to do is we can actually just delete hello.js and set up a couple of things inside. Okay, so going back to our app, the first API route we're going to set after deleting the hello.js is go to your API folder and let's make a new file and let's call it create user.js. Okay, what this is going to do is literally create a user in Sanity. So if I do create user on Sanity equals async, set that up, and every single time we make a function at these API routes, we actually have to import the client from our lib folder. Okay, from there we need to set up a try catch block, which is going to look something like this, and as the parameters we're going to put rec and res. And if you look in this try block, all I'm doing is creating a user document and sending that over to Sanity with this as our fields. The wallet address of that user, the name of that user, and the ID will also be that wallet address. And of course, we're going to define our type, which is the user doc. Okay. Next thing we want after this try catch is this await. The Sanity has this nice thing. If the user does not exist in Sanity, it will actually create that user. If it does, it will leave it alone. Okay. And of course, if it's successful, put a res status of 200. And when everything does go wrong, we need to add a catch down below. Okay. Last thing at the bottom, we have to export default create user on Sanity. Okay. The next route I'm going to set up is the fetch current user data. So it's going to be just that, current user data.js. And every single route we make is going to import that client we set up. It's going to have another function here that's just going to be get user info. And within that function, I'm going to set up a try catch, which is going to make this query. Okay, as you can tell from this function, what I'm going to be grabbing from Sanity is the current active account. So if I'm logged in, this is going to query for my user in our Sanity database. Okay, cool. After that, I'm going to make a variable called Sanity response and just store what we get back from that query. Okay, and if all goes well, that's just going to be a status of 200, and underneath we can have a try catch. Oops. And just make sure that all that code goes inside the try block. Okay, so our constant response and that res status is going to go over here. Just adjust my browser a bit. Boom. And of course, underneath the try is going to be a catch. Okay, and if anything goes wrong, we'll catch that, send a status of 500. So that's the fetch current user data. The next route I would like to add is to fetch the users. Fetching the current user, but I also want to be able to query for the rest of the users in the database. So I'm just going to say fetch users.js, do the same things, import the client again, set up my function, and you guessed it, this is also going to have a try catch block. Okay, in this try block, like I said, I'm going to be querying for all of the users except for myself. Otherwise, I'm going to be logged in and I'm also pulling me from the database. So all the users except for myself. Or in other words, except for the user that's logged in. Okay, just like the last one, I want to make a variable called the Sanity response, which is just going to hold what I get back from my query that I set up. Okay, and if it's successful, send a status of 200, and if it's not, the status should be 500. Nice. The next thing I want to make a file here called check matches client use this function, set up the try catch again. This time I'll just set the catch first. There we go. And for the try, this is the query that we're going to use. Okay. With this query, I'm going to be looking in the users and getting the liked user. And again, let's save that response in a variable called sanity response. I also want to set up a variable called isMatch. And this is the important part right here, which is I'm going to loop through the array of users, look at their likes, because every user has a likes array, if you remember from our schema. And for each user in that array, I want to check if that user liked me, because if we both liked each other, then that match should be true. So essentially, I'm looking in the likes array if the user that I liked also liked me back. And what did we do when that's successful? You guys are crushing it. It is send a status of 200 once again. Okay. And one thing that we can't forget about all these API routes is that we need to be exporting all of these. Now that's another thing that we need to think about is how are we going to save that? If you remember, in every user has a likes property that has the array of all the users that they like. This route is going to help us post that user into that array. So make a file in your API folder called savelike.js. At this point, you guys know the drill. Import the client, set up the function. The difference though is what's in this try block is we don't necessarily have to make a query. What we want to do is type in this code right here, which is we're going to wait for our client, get the current user. And again, if this is missing, we're going to have it, but it's probably not. The next thing is we're going to insert that user, right? We're inserting a reference and putting that into the likes array, because we want this to reference the user that they liked in our database. And after that, we're going to do a .commit, and that's how we add and save that we have on our app. Okay. And last thing, export the for savelike. Cool. So it looks like all of those API routes are set up. Now let's actually take advantage of those routes. And if you remember, we were setting that up in context. So going back to our Tinder context.js, we have all these functions, and we currently comment out the use effect, but now we're going to get it up and running soon. Okay. So remember the request users data. Remember all these functions here that says request something. We're going to set up some of those functions now. The first one I'm going to make is this. This one is the function called request to create a user profile. And of course, it's going to be asynchronous. And this one's going to be asynchronous, and it's going to take in parameters of a wallet address and name. We're going to set up a try catch. I'm just going to finish out the catch part of it since it's going to be standard. And it's just going to say console log, console.error, the error. Awesome. In the try block, remember that API route that we set up, we want to call it here. First thing I want to do in this try block is make an await call to that API route of create a user. All right, so in this create user, this is us creating a user on Sanity, and we have to pass in a couple of things inside this fetch call. So put a comma inside before the closing parenthesis, add these curly brackets here, and we're going to add the rest of the stuff now. Okay, what you're going to need is all of this. The method is going to be post. This has your header. We're going to stringify that user wallet address key to be the wallet address that we passed in when we call this, and the name is just going to be the same as the name. Okay. The next function that we're going to make is this one called request current user data. Make sure it's asynchronous as well, and this one's only going to take in a wallet address. Set up your try catch, finish out your catch, and then in this one we want to be fetching the current user, and we have an API route for that, which is going to be this. We're going to call that API of fetch current user data, passing in the active account. So fetch the current user with this matching wallet address, which should be there if we created a user profile already. Okay, and if that's done, make a variable called data and save the response.json in that variable data. Cool. And then now that we got that user, we want to be able to set that user in our state and pass in data.data. And then our catch is there, and we should be good to go. All right, and this last function called const request users data, and this is the other route that we have that gets all the users except for the one that is active. Because remember, in that route we said get all the users except for the current active account. So again, making a variable called data, saving the response.json there, and setting the cards data to be just that. Go ahead and hit save. And now looking at our use effect, the request users data should be there, as well as the request current user data should be there as well. So if I hit save, hopefully this works. Okay, I'm getting an issue called is not configured under your images. Okay, that should be an easy fix. If you go to your Next.js.config, you need to add Moralis in there as well. Let's take a moment to debug a couple of things. If you're seeing this error, can't resolve Sanity client, that's because we got to make sure we have that installed. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me just take this moment to debug a couple of things. We're getting a couple of errors here. The first one is if you see this can't resolve at Sanity client. That probably means you don't have that installed, like I don't have that. So let's quickly install that. Let's do yarn add at sanity/client inside your project folder. Okay, once that's done, run up your project again, and let's see what the next error is. Let's go ahead and refresh this. Okay, the next one, it says invalid source. This one should be a quick fix. This one, we have to go to our next.config.js and put Moralis in there. So if you see this error, this just means in your Next.js config, we have to allow the images from Sanity, and also we're gonna need to do images from Moralis as well. So what we need to do is add a images key here, put an object, and put domains that we'd like to add, and it's gonna be this array. And inside this array, we're gonna put these as our domains. Okay, and that should do it. Let's see what else we can come back. See what else do we need? Oh, and again, after you set up that config, we have to restart the server. So again, I'm gonna cancel it. And if you look at my terminal, I'm just gonna do yarn dev once again. Okay, let it compile, hit refresh, and we should be good to go. Awesome, so there it is. There's our lovely app. And you can see we're actually logged in. And if we hit log out, let's see if anything happens. Hey, nice work. So if I log in, we should get prompted by Metamask soon. Unless there's an error. Log in, there you go. So I hit log in. It's gonna ask me to connect with my Metamask account. Connect, here's the message that we sent. Just giving Moralis permission to have access to my information with this wallet. And there we go, I am logged in. Awesome, this is amazing. So what we could do now is go over to our header and let's work on making the current account even more dynamic. So let's just recap quickly on what we have going on so far. This is our Tinder app. We have Sanity, which is going to show us all the list of users. And currently, if I go to Studio and say Sanity Start to start up Sanity, go to Studio and go ahead and type in Sanity Start. And let's take a look at our users. Okay, and we will be able to see it at localhost 333. Awesome. We can go ahead and log into my Clever Programmer account. There you go. So remember, we only made a user schema, so that's why we see this. And we should see Gregory Bosco, which is actually just me because this is my wallet address. This name comes from what we set up earlier with Faker.js, just to generate a random name for now. Okay, and we can double check that this is my wallet address, and there we go. Cool. So what we need to do now is populate our users. Oops. What we need to do now is add some more users here besides ourselves so that we can have more people in our cards data. So I'm gonna take a moment to create a couple MetaMask wallets and then log in so that we can populate our users. Okay, once you're done signing in, you should see about 6 people. I'm gonna go ahead and update these and add some images. All right, so I finally finished setting up the dummy user data and added an image for each of those users. So what we need to do next is hop over to your context, and remember how we're storing all the query for those users in cards data. We need to pass that into our provider. So what I'm going to do is go over to value and let's make cards data global. Okay, once that's global, think about where we're going to import it, and we're going to be importing that in card. As you can see, we're mapping through the cards data, and for every user, or essentially card, we're going to make a Tinder card item. Right now we just have a static one over here. So what we need to do is import our context. So to do that, we just need to get use context from React. Then we also need to import the Tinder context. Okay, once that's done, you can hop over to here and set up the context. Hop over to line 19 and we can set up our context like, and I want to get cards data from our Tinder card text. That's what this line means. So now that we have it, we can actually uncomment this out, take out the Tinder card item because we don't need that static one anymore. And the next thing we need to do is, if you notice, we are actually passing in the individual card to that card item and a key. Next step would be to go to your Tinder card item.js and accept those props, which is just going to be card. And wherever we have something static, let's make it dynamic with the card props. So instead of this beautiful picture of this pug, we want to be using the image from that card, which is just going to be card, which we need to make a template iterate for and say card.image. Okay, next thing you want to also do is, we don't need this static wallet address. We can actually just get the card wallet address. Okay, you just need to insert this piece of code right here. It's going to grab whatever card's wallet address that is and slice it so that it looks nice and formatted like that. Okay, the next thing you want to also do is the name, which is just curly brackets card dot. And as I was saying, there's no age property, but if there was, if we did add one, we could put card.age in here as well. So Once that's done and everything is set up, make sure the image URL looks like this. Let's hit save. Hey, there we go. Look, we got Kazi in the house and he is there. Awesome. So if I swipe left, we should see the rest of our users. There's me, there's the other randomly generated users, and there you go. No more users in the area. Notice how many users there were. If I refresh this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a total of 6 users in our database. So if I go to desk, go to users, notice which one you didn't see. You didn't see Daniel Smith because I am currently logged in as Daniel Smith. And that's because what I set up with the query. We want to get users except for the current user. So that's why you didn't see Daniel Smith there, because I'm Daniel Smith. Okay, awesome. Okay, and with that, we have this amazing app that can actually pull users. Go ahead and feel free to customize this with anybody you want. It doesn't have to be these dummy users that I set up, which is what's super cool about programming. So the next thing we're going to do is set up so when I swipe, that's going to get added as a like. So at the moment, it doesn't do anything when I swipe. So let's go ahead and set that up. Like I was saying before, we're able to get all these users here. And now what we need to do is add that swipe right functionality. So that swipe right functionality is going to be over here, which we made a function called onSwipe. If the direction is right, then we're going to use the hand swipe function. At the moment, we don't have that. So let's set that up in our context. Okay, and I can just make it right here in between disconnect wallet and the request to create user profile. I'm just going to say const handle right swipe equals async and this function. Okay, it's going to take 2 parameters. First one being the card data and also the current user's address. Current user address. Okay, what we essentially want to do is something in 3 parts. The first thing we want to do is create a variable called like data and set it equal to this object where the key of liked user is the card data's wallet address. Basically, if I like Kazi here, I want to save his wallet address as the liked user, and we're going to save the current user with my address or who's ever logged in. Okay, from there, I want to set up a try catch, and of course in the error, it's going to be pretty standard, console.error. Now, here is where the important stuff happens. In the try block, we need to have a fetch. Okay, it's going to be in await, and what we're going to fetch is the API route to save like, which we set up previously. Okay, and we get that route, and we're also going to pass something else in with that fetch, which is going to be all of this, right? Because what we want to do is post that save like. So what I'm going to do is set a variable called response to an await, which is going to fetch check matches. If you guys remember check matches, what it's going to do is, let's say I liked Kazi, right? When I swipe right on Kazi, what's going to happen is we're going to check if Kazi liked me back. We're going to do that with this route right here. Okay, so inside that fetch, we also got to pass this in, which is going to be similar to what we have. Okay, next I want to create a variable called response data and set that to response.json. Next, I also want to have a match status and set that equal to response data.data is match. Right, don't forget to close that. And the next part is if there is a match and Kazi did like me back, we can console log it, which we don't have to do. And we can also just make a variable called mint data, and that's going to be an object with the wallet address, and it's going to have an array of, for this example, it's going to have the array of the liked user and also address. And for the names, it's going to have the liked user's name, which in this case could be Kazi, and also my name. And we're going to need that information for our NFT that we're creating from this. So we're saving that in a variable called mint data, and we're still within the if statement, we're going to have another fetch call. Okay, and this fetch call, it's going to request to mint match NFT, but we haven't set up that API route just yet. But in the meantime, I'm just going to set it up. And still within that fetch, this stuff is going to be pretty standard, but also pass in that mint. Okay, there we go. And now just to recap what we just did, this is the handle right swipe function. It takes in 2 parameters, cards data and current user address. And make sure it's card data and current user. Okay, once the function runs, it's going to make an object called like data, which stores the wallet address of the person that I liked and my wallet address. After that, we have a try catch. Right, it's going to save that I liked this person. Okay, from there, we're also going to make another fetch call that's going to check if that person I liked also liked me back. We'll save that response in response data, and then we also want to make a variable called match status, which is going to be equal to the status of if there is a match or not. So if there is a match, status would be true, which means this if statement would run. So in other words, if there is a match, the feeling is mutual, we're going to create this mint data object, which is the data for the NFT that we're going to mint, right? From there, we're going to call mint match NFT, which is essentially going to start the process of minting the NFT that shows that me and another person matched. So once that's done, that is the handle right swipe. So we can copy that and bring it down to our provider. Once you pass it into the provider, now that function is global and it can be called anywhere as long as we import the context. So let's go ahead and import that context because we need to put it in our onSwipe function. So go back to your Tinder card item.js. So go back to your Tinder card item.js. Let's import that use context. We also want to be importing our Tinder context so that we can set it up. And at the top level of this card, we can remove some console logs. And we want to make sure to get handle right swipe and current account from the context. Let me just double check that I'm passing current account. Yes, I am. Going back to the card, we want to get those two, that function and that variable from our Tinder context. So in our onSwipe function, we can take this guy right out and you can see that we're passing in the card that I swiped right on and the current account of the user. So it's saved. Awesome. The only thing that's left now is when I swipe, we want to trigger our smart contract and mint that NFT to the user. Now that your onSwipe function is working, if you look into the browser and click on Kazi and swipe right on him, we should see that user in the likes. Right, so keep in mind who's logged in. For me, it's Danielle Smith, and if you look, there's Kazi. Right, let's go here, back to the app. I'll say no to me, but let's say yes to Olga. All right, so swipe right, take a look, and there it is. All right, we're actually storing all of that user's likes. That is amazing. Cool. So now that's done, what we need to do now is set it that if there is a match, we need to be able to mint the NFT, showcasing that these two users are a match. All right, in this section, I'm going to be showing you guys how to actually mint the NFT if there's a match. So let's recap on what we have so far. We have this handle swipe function, and there's definitely a couple parts to it. The first one is creating that like data when I swipe right. Once I have that like data, I want to save that like into Sanity. And that's what we see here in our studio, and we see that reference to the user in the likes array of that user document. That's why we see Kazi and Olga here. After we save that like, the next thing you want to do is make a request to check the matches. Check matches is exactly what it sounds like, and it's going to grab and query all the users except for that liked user and check in the array of each user if they like them. In other words, when Danielle likes Kazi, it's going to check if Kazi also liked any users like Danielle Smith. And if they did, there should be a match. Okay. And then we store that response in response data. And we're also going to store the match status in here. Now, this is where it starts to get important because this third part we need to set up still. So if the match status is true, there is a match, we're going to create the mint data. The mint data is just essentially the person you like's wallet address and your wallet address and the person's name and your name. Danielle's wallet address, Kazi's wallet address, Danielle's name, and Kazi's name. Okay. Next thing we have here is the API request to mint the match NFT that's created when there's a match. Like I said, this route is not created yet. So go ahead and hop into your API folder under pages. So go to pages, then API, and then let's create a file and let's call it mint match nft.js. So now we're in the mint match nft.js. At this point, all of the front end is done. The rest of the things we need to do is the back end. More specifically, the mint match NFT, which all it does is makes a request to our back end and literally communicates with the smart contract that we created way in the beginning. And to do that, we're going to use Moralis to help us out. So let's set up a couple things. So going into my terminal, we can stop the project for a second and we need to do yarn add ethers and Moralis if you haven't done so already. Okay, that way we can, now that we made sure we imported it, we can actually take those two imports right here. The next thing we need to import is this line at the top. Notice how it says import Tinder address and Tinder ABI at the lib constants. At the moment, remember way back in the beginning when we deployed our smart contract and it returned a little address? If you have that saved, you need to go to your lib folder and let's make a folder called constants.js. And in your constants.js, you want to do export const Tinder address. Okay. And grab that Tinder address and go ahead and grab that Tinder address that we made all the way back in the beginning of this tutorial. And if you don't, you're in luck because we can actually just create another one. We just have to deploy our smart contract again. Just keep in mind, every time you deploy something to the blockchain, you do have to pay the gas fees. But luckily, we gave ourselves a lot of fake Ethereum if you did that step. So what we need to do now is actually cd to the smart contract and run hard hats to deploy that contract, okay? cd into the smart contract folder, and if you remember, the command is npx hard hat run script/deploy.js, and make sure you're deploying that contract to the Rinkeby test network. Hit enter, and as you can see at the top here, this is the contract address after it's deployed. If you ever redeploy your contract, because if you forgot it for whatever reason, make sure you update the constants.js to match that contract. So I'm going to hit quotes, paste, there we go. So I'm just going to clear that. And going back to the mint match NFT, you're going to see something called Tinder ABI. To get the Tinder ABI, what you need to do is go into your smart contracts folder and go underneath artifacts folder and then go into contracts. You're going to see two things at this point, which is the Tinder ERC721.json and the Tinder ERC720.dbg. Get the .json, do not get the dbg. All right, just get this one. It's Tinder ERC721.json and copy that into your lib folder. So there should be three things in your lib folder, and that's going to be the Tinder ERC721.json, constants.js, sanity.js, and this .json file. What you need to do now is go back into constants and let's actually get that Tinder, get the ABI from it. Okay, so at the top, move the Tinder address to line 3, and we could just say import Tinder ABI from that path. Okay, so now that we imported it, we can actually use it. And I'm just going to edit my browser real quick. Let's make this a lot bigger since it's going to be mostly coded. And now that we imported it, we can say export const Tinder underscore ABI. Set this equal to Tinder ABI.ABI. Awesome. Now that's done, going back into our API for the mint match, this is going to make a lot more sense. This is what we're actually importing from that constants folder. Okay, the next thing we got to do is let's create the mint match NFT function, asynchronous, and we can put rec and res as the parameters. Okay, the first thing you want to do is set up Moralis, and to do that, it's just going to be this piece of code: await Moralis start with the server URL, the app ID, and the master key. Notice how it's in these process.env variables. If you don't have that set up, go ahead and go into your env file and set that up now. I think I need to set it up myself, so I'm gonna go into my .env folder. I only have Sanity set up, so let's get the rest of it done. So what we need from this is the Moralis server URL, we need the app ID, and we also need the master key. All right, so let's go ahead and grab that. To get all three of those things, you can just hop over to your Moralis, log in, okay? And once you log in, you can just click view details, and all the things you need is gonna be in the view details, like it says it right here. Here's the application. Everything you need is gonna be in the view details button. Here's the server URL, which you can just paste in here, the application ID, and the master key. This is gonna connect your Moralis server to your app so that we can use it to communicate with your smart contract. So once those env variables are set up, that means these process.envs are gonna be active, okay? So now that you started Moralis, the next thing you wanna do is make a variable called const metadata. What we're doing here is creating a variable called metadata and essentially storing all the data that we wanna include as part of the NFT. And if you take a look, that's gonna be this stuff right here. The metadata of the NFT that we wanna create is always gonna have the name of the users that matched. It could be Kazi and somebody else. The description is going to have the two names as well, followed by a message that just says just matched. Okay, and the last thing that's important here is this image. Every NFT is going to have the same image. It's stored in this IPFS, so you don't have to insert an image. This one is already hosted and we just point to it, and that's the image of your NFT. That's already going to be handled for you. Awesome. Next, you're going to make a variable called T2Batoa, and you're going to set it equal to this piece right here. Essentially, this is an abbreviation from binary to ASCII. To explain this at a high level, all it is takes that metadata and turns it into a string, make a buffer for it, and then encode it to a base64 string that we can use. Once that's done, we're going to use Moralis to save that file, to save that variable into a file and store that into a variable called a const metadata file. And then we need to save that metadata into IPFS. And again, since this is a backend application, we need to use the master key that we set up earlier and set it to true. And now we actually have the metadata URI, which I'll store in that variable and setting it equal to the metadata file.ipfs. Next thing we're going to do is set up the provider. This is so that we can work on the Rinkeby testnet. That's why I have the chain ID of 4 and just in case the name of it Rinkeby. And for that, we're actually using Alchemy to help us talk to the blockchain. So again, make sure you have the Alchemy API, and if you don't, go ahead and set it up now. And you should have the Alchemy API URL set up inside your smart contract folder because we set it up way in the beginning. But if you haven't, go ahead and do that. Our provider setup, we want to set up a variable called const wallet provider, const wallet with provider. Set that equal to this. If you guys didn't know, the app we just created has gasless transactions. Just to explain it real quick, anytime you do something on the blockchain, you have to pay for gas. This app has gasless transactions because anytime there is gas fees, it's going to be paid for by the owner of the contract address, which is going to be that first wallet that we set up, which is why we made the wallet private key. So whoever you put as your wallet private key, they're going to be paying for all the gas fees so that your users don't have to, which is super nice. So make sure, like I said before, the wallet that you provided here has a bunch of test Ethereum that you can work with just in case anything goes wrong. And nice, cool. So all you need to do now is get that contract, pass in all of this, make sure your Tinder address is the right address of the contract. You have your ABI set up and your wallet with provider, which is gonna hold your wallet. That's gonna pay for all the necessary gas fees. Okay, I'm gonna be making a variable called const tx, set that equal to an await. If you notice here, we have await contract dot mint NFT. All right, we're actually we're invoking the Tinder contract we created and running the mint NFT function with these three parameters. The first user's wallet address, the second user's wallet address, and that metadata. This is the description and the image that we set up at the top, which comes from here. And if you remember that function, then the function that we're invoking is this one, which is gonna mint an NFT to both users that you can actually view on OpenSea. Nice. So going back to mint match NFT, we're gonna wait for, so all in all, this tx variable is just gonna run our mint NFT function from our smart contract. Okay, then we're gonna do a const here, tx equals await tx.wait. The thing that might be confusing is that there's two waits here. This await is just gonna wait for this command to finish. The tx.wait is gonna wait for the smart contract on the blockchain to finish running. All right, essentially think about it, this is waiting in Web 2. This is the wait for Web 3. Cool. And if that's successful, and I'm just gonna clean this up a bit, and if all is successful, we're going to send res.status of 200, saying that it was a success. And at the bottom, we always export default the route. Cool. So that should be it for the mint match NFT. Like I said, this is very back end heavy at this point. Okay. I set up a couple console logs here so that when I run this in my backend, we'll see all these messages in case something goes wrong along the way. What I'll do now is hop over to my Sanity and let's just review and let's make a match. So remember the matches, I was logged in as Danielle Smith. I liked two users. I liked Kazi and Olga. But what I'm going to do now is log in as Olga and then swipe right on Danielle so that it will trigger the match function, which will then trigger the mint match function. And by there, we should see all the console logs. So make sure you go back to your app and log out. I'm already logged out now. So what I need to do is log in. So just to make sure, to figure out which user you want to log into, you can click on the user you want to log in and make sure it's the wallet address of it. So mine is OX902. So that's the wallet I need to sign into. So I'm going to hit log. And these are a couple options. Looking for OX9002. This is Olga. I'll hit next, connect, signature request, and bam. So now I should be logged in as Olga. And that means I shouldn't see myself because I should see all the users except for the person logged in. So again, swipe left. There you go. So remember, Danielle Smith is who liked us. To like her back, we're going to see if the match function works. So I'm going to swipe right. Okay, it's checking matches. Oh no, it just says check matches. It's successful. So again, let's swipe left until we get to Danielle. Okay, so we got to Danielle. Let's go ahead and swipe mint match NFT. And looks like we got an error. Cannot read property undefined to hex string. Okay, so I think I got a handle of what the issue is. What the issue is in your EMV local, we need to have the Alchemy API URL and the wallet private key in there as well. I forgot we have it in an EMV file in our smart contract folder, but you want to take those and put it into the local EMV, this one, and change the Rinkeby underscore private key to wallet private key. That's the reason why it wasn't working. So let's just recreate that one more time and let's see if it works. All right. So what I'm going to do is remove Olga's like and hit publish. So now it looks like she never liked any users. So we can set up that match function once again. I'm logged in as Olga. Let's just do a yarn dev. Anytime you fix your ENV files, you need to restart your terminal. So I'm gonna start yarn dev. Okay, it's compiling, hit refresh. It stood, I never logged out, so it should remember that I'm logged in. Nice, so I'm all good today. And let's go match with Danielle. So let's say no to all these beautiful people. We're at Danielle, and let's keep an eye on the console. So swipe, we're gonna save that like, it's gonna go through check matches. It didn't go through. Let's try this again. Okay, cool. So I restart my terminal. I'm logged in as Olga. Let's go match with Danielle. So I'm gonna say no to all these beautiful people. Once we get to Danielle, to make it a match, let's swipe right. So we're saving the like, we're checking the matches, we're minting the match NFT. We get the console log. This is the provider. This is the transaction receipt. Nice. Okay, this last console log here is this TX receipt. So that means all of this process went through and it was working. And if you guys want to see the NFT, we can actually see it by going into OpenSea. OpenSea is a marketplace that showcases what NFTs you owned. If you remember, we're on the testnet, so we need to go to the testnet's version of OpenSea. And whenever you deploy it to the blockchain, depending on what chain you're on, it's gonna take a couple minutes for you actually to see it. So what you need to do is log in to the users that have the NFT, which is, for me, Olga, and I'm logged in already. And if I click on profile, hey, there it is. This is my match, Danielle Smith and Olga. All right, this is the unique NFT, and with the description that we set up, and this is the image that's hosted. Let's frickin' go. We have this beautiful Tinder clone that we can use. Feel free to customize it, make your own dating profile. And once you deploy this project online to either Vercel, Netlify, go ahead and share it with your friends and tell them to connect their Metamask. And each time they log in, they're gonna be part of the users. This is gonna be a fun project to make and add to your portfolio. I hope you guys made it to the end of this video. Comment down below goldfish so that I know that you made it to the end of the video and you completed this project. So thanks for watching. Be sure to keep a lookout for our future on Web 3.0. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. See you next time.